See if we can do this without any tech issues. What's up, everybody? It's episode 38. I've done 38 of these. So excited to be here. Thank you guys. For anyone who is watching live, I will try to check you out in the chat if you want to say hello, and I'll say hi back. But I have an amazing co-host, as I always do, but this one's going to be super fun, and it's going to be super hilarious because I have the amazing, awesome, ever so amazing, I already said amazing, Pat Dwyer. Pat, hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Woo, we're gonna have so much fun today, and we are going to crack jokes. We're gonna just be super silly, and we're gonna talk about the deep and universal power of humor. Did I get that right? The universal and deep power
and universal. All the things. All the many things.
We're gonna tap into the universe and just make a lot of funny today. So while I'm getting my screen situated, now that we've done the intro, Pat, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and share your amazingness?
Sure. Hi, I'm Pat. Lovely to be here. Just lovely. April and I mean, gosh, we've known each other for a little while now. But I have the great opportunity to go around the country and chat with people about humor and culture change and change in general and things like that. It's great. It's super fun. But we met at a speaking engagement, I think, where we just super hit it off, and we've been chatting like this off camera for just a long time.
Yes.
So we figured, well, let's get it on camera so that people remember that we exist.
Yes. Oh, show. And so the type of work that you do is a lot of speaking and all of that fun stuff. What types of organizations and places do you speak at?
Oh, big and small, lots of standard speaker type of things. So associations and conferences. I actually have been doing a lot of workshopping for organizations that are trying to bring change into their organization. So I'll go in and I'll help them activate that change and help start conversations that they haven't had an opportunity to have before. So that's been really fun using. So I came up in the world of comedy in Chicago, improv comedy specifically, and I'll use a lot of those techniques to help people start to talk to each other and start to learn those larger lessons of communication and larger tenets of using humor to derive change and derive greatness.
Yes. And I love this because I think, we're probably going to talk about this in the deep dive discussion of the theme. Humor seems to be something that's like fun, and and I've talked about this in previous episodes where, sometimes we feel obligated to be super serious because, we're doing real things here, but it's not as fun if you don't infuse humor into what you do. And so I think this has been a trend that's starting to shift, and people are trying to leverage this like kind of form of entertainment to amplify what they're doing at work, and I just love it. And so I love people who are doing this in the world. And while I'm not going and speaking about humor specifically, I will try to infuse it into everything that I do because it has to be fun. Life has to be fun. So yay. So yes, we met at Ignite, which is the I've done 3 now. How many have you done?
I think I've done 4.
Yeah,
I have 3 or 4. Let's call it 3.
So I think that the first Ignite that I ever went to see as a spectator, Pat was doing a talk, and these are 5-minute talks. So there's 10 speakers. The slides auto advance every 15 seconds, so it's a little bit intense. But Pat, you did one that was about just like running the like Disney Princess Half Marathon or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I love this. And I think that there were a lot of people that were doing more comedic speeches that time. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do all this. I came up with all these fun ideas, which I've never put into action in real life, but I will someday, and maybe in these shorter videos. And I did Ignite 3 times, and 2 of those times we got to be on stage together. So that was
we sure did.
Yeah. So
it's the best. I mean, Ignite is such a blast, and it is very difficult because, again, as you said, it's as it auto advances, you're like, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of keep up with my slide presentation
Yeah.
because as you're both speaking to the crowd and then waiting for your slide to come, you either are waiting for it or it's already happened and you're like, oh shoot. There is, as much as you can prepare for it, it just kind of is going to be what it's going to be. So I've always approached it not unlike approach my speaking stuff. I love telling stories that are funny and have fun with them. I did a speech at Ignite on how to hang out in a room full of people who know about sports when you know nothing about sports, which is kind of my life and kind of not my life. I enjoy sports, but I don't know. When people start talking stats, I'm just like, oh yeah, cool. Because I don't know what's happening. I know that you take the football from one end to the other, and sometimes that way. But I'm that's not really my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think the first time I was just like, let me just do this thing, and I very much rehearsed, even not as much because I think I had just started doing improv by that point, and I was like, well, let me see what I can wing because you have to. It's a big timing game. You have to
Yeah.
have 15 seconds of content for one slide. And then just so that you're not like twiddling your thumbs waiting for the next one. But then when you do that, it's kind of like you need to talk and you just need to like, and I talk a lot. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, I just can't have a quiet. So I'm just going to keep on saying words until the next, oh, okay. And then this is where I'm going to,
Right.
so it is really, really, it's an interesting challenge. So we'll see, but it's been super fun. And I think by the third time that I did it, I was like, we've never really hung out. Let's go hang out. And so he lives in Milwaukee and I live in Chicago. So we met halfway and we had this fun lunch on the water with this
Yeah.
kid that was getting grilled by their mother about things
It was
it was not
super duper uncomfortable. That kid was getting emotionally browbeaten by her mother, and the two of us were just kind of like, I guess I don't know how to handle this. I'm not
like,
sure
well, if
what.
she would just be quiet, we could all enjoy our lunch. And I was like, if you could be a good mother.
Oh, and then the
He's not
cop showed
watching, but
up. Didn't the cop show up at one point?
yeah, and they're like, see, you were being too loud, and now the cops are here. Like it was just like, oh, the kid's gonna struggle with a lot of guilt, and it just broke both of our hearts. So
It
we are
was
not here to talk about like negativity, but
no.
and maybe the mom was going through a situation, so I want to be compassionate, but it was really, really hard to like just see a kid being treated that way, and so. But
But
anyway.
I'll tell you what, the sandwich we had was delightful.
Yes. Oh my God, it was so good. And then I think it was cold, but then we had like the heaters and then it was too hot. So lots of stuff. Yeah.
We basically every time we hang out, something amazing happens.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we got to do that again because I want
Yeah.
more amazing things in my life. Not that it's not already amazing, but yes. Okay. So the next thing I want to ask you, which I ask all of my co-hosts, is what is something that you geek out on? And so you can't say comedy because we already know that. And so something unique. It could be also a fun fact if you rather share that, but something that people wouldn't necessarily know about you that you have passion around or something you want to share.
So I'm going to go deep embarrassing here because we might as well. Welcome to life.
Do it.
So when I was touring the country doing comedy, which was at this point 10 years ago, I want to say, I started doing this thing with the National Park System. So the national parks in the United States has a passport program. And every time you go to a new state park, they will, or monument or something like that, or historic site, they'll stamp your passport. So you can show people all the places you've been. Now, for children, ages 5 to 12, I think is what it is, they have a junior ranger program. And the junior ranger program is they give you an activity book that is multiple pages, but it's, things like word searches or site searches, or sometimes they'll have like stories and coloring pages that you have to like fill out to finish that thing. So for kids who are 5 to 7 or something, I think they only have to choose 2 activities, and older kids have to do basically the whole book. But you get a little plastic badge that says the site name on it and says Junior Park Ranger, and you can wear it around, and the rangers swear you in as a Junior Park Ranger of that site. So I have currently 32 badges from different sites around the country. Again, this started when I was touring, so I was 25 when this started happening.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and we, I remember I started the first site that I started at was at Central High School in Alabama or Arkansas, which is where the segregation, the first kids came into school in the United States. First Black kids came into school in the United States.
Yeah.
So the first integrated school in general. And so we got to we filled out the book, and you learn. I found that I learned about the site like crazy.
Yeah.
So whenever we would pass a sign on the road that was like, oh, it's a historic site, or they call them brown signs because
Yeah.
on the highway they're brown.
Yes.
So the brown signs, every time we pass a brown sign, we go, oh, let's pull over, let's plan this into our day. Let's go get Junior Park Ranger badges. So when I stopped touring, I kept doing it for fun. And so I would do corporate shows, and there happened to be a historic site near there, and I'd go and get my badge.
I love it.
So
I
I'm up
feel
to
like that's something that
52.
my family should do, but
So great. And my kids now do it. I got my wife to do it on our honeymoon. She's like, this is dorky. I'm like, yeah, there is.
you're
Super
like,
dorky.
this is what you signed up for.
Yeah,
Get ready for it.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
it.
it's good.
Yeah.
But I've been actively trying to convince my wife to allow me to have a shadow box that I can put all my badges in, because I just have them in a bag.
Yeah, no, you have to do
Um,
that. You gotta put it on the wall and
yeah, like this thing back here. I don't know if you can see this. These are my race medals
yes.
from all the different half marathons and runs that I've done. I put them in this nice, beautiful shadow box. But look, see this space? There's a space right next to it. That's where that needs to go.
It's
Clearly.
looking lonely. It needs
Ugh.
park ranger badges. I love that. That is super awesome. I'm gonna have to look that up because I feel like we're trying to do the whole national parks thing now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're gonna go to all of them, but my husband's really excited about going to as many as possible. So
Well, I
I
mean,
feel like
even
we
just
need to
some of
document that
them.
somehow.
I
What?
will say this: as an adult, it does. For anybody who's watching this who needs to know this information, it does occasionally take some convincing, because the Rangers are not accustomed to having old men ask them if they could be junior park rangers. So yeah, I mean, eventually, I usually get by. I mean, I remember my crowning achievement was New York City. I got 4 badges in one day, between Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty and Grant's Tomb, and I think it was Battery Park. I got all of them in one day and was like, yeah, racking it up.
That's crazy.
Oh, I'm such a
There's like this whole program to get these things.
yeah, it's really neat.
And
Well,
all the badges are different. Like,
they are different they've got a different little emblem on them, and the words are different, but they're shaped all the same, and they're
that's
gold.
crazy.
But I mean, they're basic, like what would be, like on an airplane, they have wings and they're like that plastic with the metal
Yeah.
bar on the back. It's like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, supposedly they were going to start a junior park ranger program for adults, because more and more adults are doing what I've been doing for a long time.
Those people are just copying you now.
Yeah, fine, do it. Love the parks. I don't care.
Yeah.
But they supposedly they were doing that, and then they kind of doubled down and went into the passport program a little bit harder, which who needs a stamp and a passport? I want a badge. I want a badge.
The badges are way more fun. So
But
that's
admittedly,
cool.
April, that's the same reason why I do runs, because I get swag. It's not
Yeah,
about
I mean, it's like that little. You need that reward after doing something.
walk around with a big medal. I'm like, yeah, fine.
Ready to show off.
Yeah, it's my life.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so the next thing I
Yeah.
have this game
Yes.
that I've been using for 37 episodes now. So vulnerability is sexy. I've got this fun game. So there's 3 different categories. Pat, you have to pick a category, which is between break the ice, get vulnerable, or laugh a little. And I will read the question once we pick the category, and we'll both answer it. So we
Okay.
don't know what that is until. So which one do you want?
We're on the vulnerability train anyways. Let's start there, and then we'll go to the other stuff. How about that?
You wanted you
Get
what?
vulnerable.
You want to do get vulnerable. Okay.
Let's do it. Let's get in there.
Yeah. So we're doing so here's the one question. Ooh. The question is, what was the hardest obstacle, so while it's trying to zoom into this, you have ever had to overcome in your life? The hardest obstacle. I know mine already.
Oh, you know what? I do know. I do know. Do you want to think of yours first, or should I just start?
You can go.
Okay. So the thing that led me into comedy in the first place was
Uh-huh.
also the hardest time of my life. And I think that's really what well, I mean, it definitely led me to comedy, but it also was something I just had to figure out. So I was in the US Peace Corps years ago, and I got really sick. I was in Mauritania in West Africa, and I got really sick. I got it's about 130 degrees on a cold day, and I was drinking a lot of water and wasn't really retaining any of it, so I started to get dehydrated, and then I got dysentery
Ugh.
3 times in a row.
Or how many times?
Three. It was nuts.
3.
Yeah, three. So I ended up losing 60 pounds in a month and a half. I was retaining pretty much nothing. I started losing motor function. Started. I would just like, I would like walk places and just like fall down because like I like you start to trip and you catch yourself, but I was getting weaker and weaker, and I would just like fall down and just skid in the dirt. But because it's sand, I mean, because I was in the Sahara, it's at least it's softer than normal kind of ground. So I'd just like be down on the ground laughing, like, hey, I'm down here again. And that the thing that I had to overcome with that was I spent a lot of time working to get into the Peace Corps and working to create a life that my hope was to go into the State Department and do international work with the State Department and things like that. Studied as best as I could for that, geared up for the Peace Corps, got really invested myself in that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally made it to the infirmary in the Peace Corps, people were coming to visit, other volunteers were coming to visit because I was making them giggle, because that's just how I had always related to the world.
Yeah.
And I was making them laugh as an escape. And it turned out it was an escape for them, but it was very much an escape for me as well of what I was dealing with. And one of my friends said, have you ever thought of Chicago and comedy and doing improv and things like that? I honestly didn't really know the breadth of what he was talking about. I kind of like heard of it, but I didn't know anything of what he was talking about.
Yes.
So when I was ultimately sent home because of the sickness, uh, I had the opportunity to go back into the Peace Corps and do a different country in a different region. But I took a leap based on my experiences there. And my friend said, if you are affecting positive change in this situation, dealing with what you're dealing with, wouldn't that be a good thing to give to the world? Isn't that kind of what you're aiming for anyways?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. So I moved to Chicago after that instead of getting back in the Peace Corps. And gosh, that was 15 years ago, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, overcoming the self-definition of who I was supposed to be, what I was and what I am. And oh my gosh, I love comedy so much now. And like between the science and the craft of it, and having really professionally done it for, I don't know, let's say 12 of those 15 years.
Yeah.
I met my wife when I was doing it. It's colored my entire world, and I could not be happier. Oh my gosh. And the fact that I have an opportunity to let people giggle and give them an escape from what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a little bit longer winded, but like I've never, ever been in comedy I know individuals who've gotten into comedy to make it big and to be famous.
Yeah.
If I did that, that would certainly be fine. I'm not opposed to that, but it would be because I could affect more people and help. I'm not a functioning member of society, April. I'm just not. I'm actively not a functioning member of society. I am able to give the functioning members of society an escape from what they have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you're a neurosurgeon, you're doing great stuff. You're doing really positive work. I'm guessing you're probably not rewiring brains like Frankenstein. So you're probably doing good things. And if you're so stressed that you don't function at your highest capability, there's little I can do other than make you laugh. And if I'm provided that opportunity, maybe I'm making positive change. And so that's kind of like, I work on a drop in the bucket kind of thing. Perhaps it's a little egotistical for me to even suggest I help people, but that's why I'm in it. That's why I do it.
Yeah, no, and that's beautiful. And I think, having gone through improv myself too, I feel like I was definitely surrounded by a lot of 20 somethings who were like, I'm here to make it, or I'm going to make it in Hollywood. I'm like,
Yeah,
great. Like, that's awesome. I'm here to just not be so scared on stage when I'm speaking in front of people and to have fun and figure out a way to weave this fun stuff into my business. And it was
absolutely.
successful. But I love it because I get to talk about being comedic, even though I'm probably not as funny as I'd like to say I am.
I
But
mean,
it's
you
great.
do all right. Let's be honest. You
I'm
do all.
okay. I'm okay. I have my moments. I have my moments for sure. Um,
Well, it's nice though now that I mean, in going to the businesses that I'm going to and talking with the people that I'm talking with and taking this to like a frontline situation where before people had to come to my hilarious comedy shows to have that
yeah,
effect. Like now I'm like bringing that to people and saying like, this is a real thing. Like
yeah.
y'all could chill out a little
The
bit.
world needs it too.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
world needs it so much, and we're going to definitely talk about why and how to infuse more of that later. And
but what about you? Yeah.
I will say that, same thing, I feel like this is a question that just keeps on popping up, and it's so still fresh, even though it's been 5 years, where, I had to walk away from my job and a life that I had been creating for myself over, the 13 years that I was employed, obviously bouncing around to different industries and trying to find where I fit. And I thought that I knew I thought I was where I fit at that point, and turns out that I wasn't. And so having to walk away from all the definitions that similar to you, that just who I was supposed to be, because my parents wanted me to be successful, and the world had this own definition of like what success should be, and I was like working towards that, and I was actually like accomplishing it, but then I got
Yeah.
to it and I was like, there's
Yeah.
still something missing. And
Yeah.
so having to be able to throw that away and like not even have a job coming out of that, knowing what I was going to do next and not having a plan. It's probably one of the scariest things as somebody who's a super planner, not knowing what I was going to do next
Yeah.
was terrifying.
Yeah.
But now it's like kind of, I live that way. I have intentions, but I'm also very open. And like, that was the lesson that I needed to learn. So like you, there's this beauty in like the most painful obstacles that we've had to overcome became the start of the beautiful parts of the life that we're supposed to be living. We just didn't know that at the time. So that's why I love this question. I feel like it's always good to know that, and we all have struggles, we all have obstacles that we have to overcome. So I think it's as painful as it is to go through it, like there's so many beautiful lessons to be learned.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I've always equated it to the laws of energy,
Yeah,
and there's an equation like there's no loss of energy ever, right?
yeah.
So if the teeter totters up one day and down one other, it's gonna go back and forth. So
Hmm.
yes, this was terrible, but it led to this greatness,
Yeah,
and vice versa. The laws of conservation of energy will always allow us to get like I am in a terrible, terrible place, but I know for a fact eventually this is going to happen.
yeah,
I don't know what this is going to look like, but it's coming because that energy is there.
yeah.
Like it's not it's like the half glass full thing. It's not the
Mhm.
glass isn't ever empty. It's either air and water or mostly water and a little air. Like it's like that. There's always energy in there.
Yeah,
So,
totally. I love that. So, yay, that's amazing. And then the next thing before we finally go into our chat on how we can leverage humor and just all things humor, cheerful news. So, I always
yay.
ask myself and my co host to bring a story that is positive, to just kind of help push the energy of positive news out into the world, because we need more of it. We know that general media can tend to default to the negative. So this is just a way to energetically push the good stuff around in the world. So you want me to go first? Since
Yeah,
we're
go first. You go
okay.
first. Go ahead.
So this is fun. Was searching for a story this morning, that was positive, that I heard on the radio, but then I came across this other one in my little CNN bucket of good news, and I picked it only because it was actually in my like area, um, but it's on CNN. So there's this um, crossing guard in Wilmette, Illinois, which is not far from me at all. He had it was his birthday, and so 100 more than 100 people showed up to celebrate this crossing guard's birthday, and it was children who okay, so he had turned 80, so they wanted to thank him for being a positive person in their lives. And so the kids and parents from the area basically threw a surprise party for him, and like all of these kids came and took this photo with him, and I'm like, this is like so close by. And I just thought that that was great. And I think earlier in the year we were doing some sort of like staff appreciation for our kids' schools, and they were talking about like, ooh, we should get something for the crossing guard. And I was like, people forget the crossing guard, but this was just cute. And maybe this is just a thing in Illinois because it's cold. It gets really, really cold, and these crossing guards, they're just out there like standing out there for an hour in sub-zero temperatures sometimes, like walking kids across the street. And it's such a thankless job, but like to be recognized for that and to just know that those people are people who live their own lives and are doing this out of the goodness of their heart to keep children safe, it just like warmed my heart, so I had to share it. So his name is Alec Childress, if I hope I pronounced it wrong. And they made a sign that said Alex Corner with like a little peace symbol next to it, just like the green like street signs.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, thought that was super cool. So that's my story.
Awesome. That's a good. I like that. That's very fun.
Yeah. How about you?
So I was looking just through tons of articles, and I found a couple that I was like, oh, I gotta talk about all of these articles. I'm not going to do that. It's too many.
Yeah, talk about humor. That's why.
Well, very fair. I will say the one thing that I'm going to just touch upon real quick that I thought was pretty cool is the WHO, the World Health Organization, specifically in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. Not in Nigeria, but in general, they vaccinated 151 million kids last year.
Wow.
That's that, like in their annual campaign, they just did that. But I'm not going to talk about that. I am going to talk about children, because there is a kid in Maine. Oh my God, this kid is an amazing child. His name is Jake. I'm just going to say Jake. I don't want to say his last name because it's weird. It is in the news article, but it's not my place. He's in a middle school, and his dad bet him that he wouldn't wear a hot dog costume for his picture.
For his school picture?
For his school picture and for his ID and things like that.
Oh my gosh.
The kid convinced the administration and the picture taker to let him wear his hot dog costume. So this kid has, it's like the student ID, it's like with the little square picture, like a license.
Yeah.
It's just him like a hot dog, which is just my favorite. And it is my favorite for any number of reasons outside of the fact that he's dressed like a hot dog. But also in the sense that he's dressed like a hot dog, that is my favorite, because no matter what happens, anybody looks at that, it's going to brighten their day. And I love those types of things.
I love that too. I want to see the picture now. You're going to have to.
I'm going to have to send it to you, and you're going to have to put it on all the many social medias.
Yes.
So it's so great.
So wait, so his dad bet him, and then he talked his school into letting him do this. So what did they bet? Did they bet anything?
I think it was not like a bet, like a casual bet, like,
so it's like, totally no, you wouldn't do that. And he's like,
and then he did. And then the fact that he got the school, this little boy convinced the school to let him like do it was kind of the biggest thing, that the dad was just like genuinely proud, like, oh, my kid actually talked himself into a place that he probably shouldn't have been in. And that was pretty fun. Yeah. But yeah, thank you, Maine, huh? Come on, hot dog kid.
Thank you for creating good news that we get to spread. I love it. All right, so should we talk humor?
I mean, why not, huh?
Why not? I mean, okay, so I mentioned a little bit earlier about how like humor maybe is becoming a less taboo topic in these like serious workspaces. I mean, I think and I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but one of the things that I loved about my office where I used to work was that my boss's boss was just always loved playing jokes. And so I think there was one Halloween where we found this like big like Dracula M&M's costume, and like we basically like posed him in different like ways and around his office, and then we were like leaving different things and decorating the door. It was just super funny, and we would do little things like this, and then he would embrace it and do more, and I'm like, what workplace does funny stuff like this?
Yeah,
I absolutely love it. But and I mean, and because you're in this place where people are hiring you to kind of infuse this as a way to drive change, do you
mhm.
see that there are more people that are kind of getting on this bandwagon? Because I feel like maybe like 10 years ago, this like there weren't as many people who were, leveraging improv and comedy and those types of things to, accomplish things in a corporate workplace, right? Do you?
Yeah, I think so. What is, I think, really changed in the last 15 years is that there's been a heap of data that has come out. So there's two sides of comedy, right? There's the craft of comedy and creating comedy, and then there's the science of comedy and laughter. And it's a very real, tangible thing, right? So I think what's happened in the world of HR is that people are realizing it. I mean, with improv, at least from a communication standpoint, and allowing individuals to talk to one another, it's really helped organizations directly talk and address with their people. And so, using the skills and the techniques that come out of a basic improv game,
Mhm.
opening the floodgates of communication has certainly helped quite a bit from an HR perspective.
Yeah.
But in a regards to a retention perspective,
Mm,
laughter and humor and comedy, I guess, I mean, for lack of a better term, but like humor in the workplace in general boosts retention drastically.
mm,
The scores, NPS scores, for instance, go up when people are giggling in the office and when there is a sense of levity in an office place.
yeah.
Um, I think we are starting to realize that work can be done and can be efficient, but it can also be enjoyable. We spend an astronomical amount of time in our workspaces.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 90,000 hours in your lifetime. That is a ton of time.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time that a lot of people are just like, well, I'll be better when I'm out of work. Like the, the 4 hours before I go to sleep, them's my time. Why? Why is that happening? So I think people are starting to realize that uh, just from general happiness, people are much more effective at work. They're doing a lot better work. They are creating a space where their peers are doing better work, and their
Yeah.
customers are feeling that. And it's only profitable. And so people have, I think HR kind of spawned it on, but now sales is starting to get into it and realizing, oh, if we are just people for a little while, we actually end up with a lot more money. So
Yeah.
that's been helping a lot too. I mean, when you, from a science perspective of laughter, like when you giggle, you release endorphins, right? Your
Yep.
brain pumps out chemicals that make things seem better.
Yep.
Serotonin also kicks out, and that's a natural antidepressant. So between that and the fact that when you do that, your brain automatically ties you to the people in the room with you.
Yeah.
It is a those are bonding chemicals. So when your body releases those things, you're more apt to be connected to the people in the room. There's a sense of camaraderie, togetherness, and it actually makes it easier to lead your teams when that is the situation. This is a bit of an anecdote that's a little bit away from this, but if you are on a first date
Hmm.
and you take that first date to an amusement park, you are more likely to stay together longer than somebody who didn't go into that type of situation. So, and that could be an amusement park, it could be some high intensity situation like skydiving or something like that. Hey, first date skydiving, come on now. But like your body releases these things that bond you to people. Like I think women find it's like top three things that women want in men is humor.
Yeah.
Men want in top three are people who laugh at their jokes, which I think is very. It's like women are 126% more likely to be laughers in a relationship than
Yeah.
men. They laugh 126% more than the men do. Um, but at the same time, men need that feedback to feel worth and
Yeah.
value, which I think is great. But that being said, like those types of experiences keep your workforce rooted and believe that the company is doing stuff. I mean, aside from reducing anxiety and gosh, blood pressure goes down.
Yeah.
The enhanced perception of leadership skills goes up drastically when you make people giggle, when you make people laugh. So like you could be a mediocre leader, but you make somebody laugh, all of a sudden they think you know what you're talking about, which is great. Fine. That's 90% of leadership anyways, is
Yeah.
convincing people you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I
So
think that it also like leads to this like idea of engagement. I mean, that was one of the big initiatives that I cared about when in my previous job, in one of the leadership roles that I had taken on. Like, how do you get the staff body more engaged in what we're doing? Because we are working really, really hard. Sometimes we don't get that feedback that what we're doing is appreciated. So how
mhm,
can we do that in a way that's fun and lighthearted and makes them feel like worth worth all the effort that they're putting in to continue to put out good work and continue to make them want to stay, right? Because I mean,
absolutely.
and I don't think that every company cares as much about retention as I'd like them to think,
Yeah, I
especially
agree.
with just people moving around. But I think there's this idea of like, if you keep your employees happy, um, they will put out more better work or continue to put out good work. And they come with this institutional knowledge that could really, really help rather than going and hiring somebody new from the get-go, right?
Absolutely.
And so,
Well,
if you have employees that you want to keep, well, who knows what we do with those people that we want to get rid of, but I'm just kidding. Who, of these people who, you want to foster and you want them to grow and continue to promote your brand, then why not do it in an engaging presentation style
yeah,
where, because if somebody's like, okay, here is our 7-year vision and here's what we're gonna do, like I would have probably fallen asleep already at that
everybody falls asleep. As
point.
you should. You should totally fall asleep, and you should let them know that you're falling asleep. But I prefer goodbye, and then you fall. Yeah, you fall. I mean, like, but I mean, even in regards to retention, I mean, some companies are more, some companies are less. But I mean, on
Mhm.
average, I think it's about $40,000 to train a new person.
It
Like that's how much it costs.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's if you can create a space, and I think there is a real worry from leadership that you need to be actively funny all the time, and that's going to be uh, distracting from work, and that's going to be a problem.
Mm.
And but that's a certainly a leadership style issue.
Yeah.
But I think it's more the misconception comes in needing to lambaste people with so many funny things. Like, it's like dad jokes. Like they're great and everything, but I mean, where do they go after that?
Yeah.
I think the real thing is drops in the bucket. You put a drop, it ripples out and creates much bigger effect. Like every single drop creates a wave that gets bigger and bigger. And
Yeah.
so I think it's not a matter of throwing hilarious into everything. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be so funny now. It's little doses of and that could be anything from one of the things that I work on quite a bit is like just convincing people to high five each other. Because
Mm.
the high five is like an HR appropriate hug. Like you just
Yeah.
you just like high five each other, and everybody's like, "Yeah, I'm on board. Okay, cool." Yeah, I mean, it even in regards to just like if we're looking at the science of human contact, if we're looking at like the rally call, if
Mhm.
we're looking at just fun of like, "Hey, I just high five somebody." That's not a thing you do with a business suit on. Um, like, why not? Why aren't you high fiving everybody? I'm
Yeah.
in a business suit. Like, yeah, man, I'm in a business suit. Pow, pow. Like, that should be a thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's those little doses of energy and those little doses of what would be humor and what would be laughter and play. Little doses of play create a space where you make money. Like that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
You make money. And I'd love to sugarcoat it, but that's at the end of the day, y'all making money. So
Yeah.
that's why companies are kind of coming around to it because they're realizing how profitable it is to have a culture that's not boring.
Yeah. Totally. And I think too that, you know, when companies are like, okay, we need to do something to, team development or professional development, what is it that we can do? We think about how, I'm totally losing my train of thought right now, but how we want to, they try to think about, well, what is it that we actually want our
Yeah.
employees to do? And it it really does come down to money, right? And so they're kind of investing in this thing that is probably entertaining to them as well,
Yeah.
and finding different ways to do that, even though you kind of think about like, okay, how do you make that connection? Like, laughs, money, right? So if we were to kind of walk through that and to kind of summarize what we've been talking about the last 10 minutes or whatever. So the laugh leads to the what to the money. What's the stuff that's in between that you see?
The stuff in between, sure. Well, I mean, it's kind of its own like little tidal wave, right?
Yeah.
So, a little laugh. It's like the easiest way. There is the idea of like if you do one good deed for somebody, somebody else does a good deed.
Yeah.
If and not even like we could talk about the distinctive scientific steps here. I don't want to do that. Let's
Yeah.
just
I
talk
don't want
about
to do that either.
how we
That's
affect.
not fun. That's, yeah.
Like if I say something nice to you,
Mhm.
you are 100% more likely to say it to somebody else or
Yeah.
say something nice to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like if you walk into a retail situation and you're having a bad day, that's not going to be easy for anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't end well for the people who are helping you. It doesn't end well for you. You're even less likely to buy something in that store because you are unhappy.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's like part of the reason I'm sure why Disney World pumps the scent of vanilla into Main Street USA, because
Uh-huh.
it has an association for most people of their childhood, of youth, and it creates a space where you just like start throwing money at stuff. So I
Yeah.
mean, like there again, there's a few steps in between there, but you end up like spending more money
Yeah.
in the park because of the scent of vanilla.
Yeah.
That scent of vanilla for humor is
Yes.
saying something silly or doing something silly. One thing that I loved to do when I was working in an office space more often
Mhm.
is during conference calls, I would occasionally row by a window.
I love that.
Welcome back.
Oh my God,
It's
I would laugh
fun.
every
And
single time if you did that to me.
people have to like, and they stop themselves from giggling, or they do laugh and then they explain it to the client. But from a culture perspective, what it did was give a dose of energy to wake those people back up. So in meetings, often, and what we've seen in the last, 15, 20 years, is people in larger meetings like, great, now's the point in the meeting where we're going to stand up because our brains are stopping to work. So humor in those types of situations and a little dose of laughter in those situations is a stand up without the physical action of a stand up. It bursts your brain through with a whole bunch of like chemicals of goodness and happiness, and makes your brain function at its highest capacity in a matter of 2 seconds. And then people are more apt to do better things and better things with each other and for each other. So in regards to me making somebody giggle in the morning, that's going to ripple throughout their entire day of the person who's giving it to somebody. And
Yeah.
if I've done that for somebody and then they happen to mistakenly or purposefully do that to somebody else, then it creates a larger wave.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really a dominoes issue of one moment of levity and one moment of happiness
Yeah.
creates dominoes throughout your organization that helps everybody function at their highest capacity.
Yeah. So it's almost kind of like this burst of energy that is positive, that then kind of ripples through to everyone, because energy is always moving, and
Yeah.
um positivity can, these types of emotions and this energy can be very contagious, and it just kind of gets the molecules moving, if we want to talk about it in that scientific way,
Totally.
um, which then increases productivity, which then increases the bottom line. There you go, money, money,
Yeah.
throwing
Yeah,
it out.
and it's literally something as simple as rowing by an office or high fiving or telling a joke that is HR appropriate.
And that's actually what I wanted to talk about next, right? Because we don't want to always have to lean on in the workplace, or even just, for people who are watching this that are entrepreneurs or doing their own thing. Like we are all leaders in our own respective things. So you could do this in your family, like you can apply this anywhere. But if we were all to kind of get on this bandwagon of like creating more humor, even if we don't think we're like funny or not, because that could be a totally separate conversation. But what can we do in the things that we lead, or the things that we are involved in, to infuse more humor? And I say this, as a question, which, I know that I'm actively thinking about this all the time, because I want to think of funny ways to share my message that I want to start implementing into the work I do, because then that just makes my job way more fun. But we can do this with our families, we can do this with our friends, we can just do this with random strangers. And how can we kind of like increase the vibration of the entire world using humor, right? And so yeah, let's think of some tactics that we can share. So you were sharing very easily, like rowing. Is there like a way that you need to like row?
Is there a way to row? Nah, just get go for it.
Or there's like the stairs thing where like people are like,
oh yeah,
or there's like
go like this. Yeah.
And I can't do it on this video because I have this small space, and then now you see the things that I'm trying to hide with my chair. But
my favorite though is the wine cellar. So excuse me, I have to go to the wine cellar, and then you walk like a spiral staircase down.
So it's like you're walking.
It makes me so happy. It's like, oh yeah, it's a spiral staircase. You don't explain it, you just do it. It just makes me laugh. So this is where we go from the science of funny to the craft of funny. And I think this is where this changes, right? Yeah. So comedy is math. It is music, which music is math. Mm-hmm. It can be very formulaic. Now, there are a few ways people will laugh at things, right? We know there are different ways to derive laughter from people. So some of the big ones are they notice a commonality in themselves. Like you will laugh at something that you recognize in yourself.
Yeah.
Good or bad, but if you say, be like, oh, that's me too, that's funny, right? So that's one way. But mostly what it comes from is surprise. So you, with comedy, what will happen is you go in one direction, and then that direction where you think the anticipated end would be changes. And that little change is surprise. And in that surprise, our natural inclination is to laugh at that. That's why people. So, I mean, the way that your brain identifies and releases chemicals based on laughter is different for having been told a joke versus getting tickled versus you finding something funny yourself. Like that's three different types of chemical activations in your brain based on how people communicate. Like babies laugh. We have a pretty good thought that cavemen back in the day were laughing with each other before they learned how to actually formulate real language.
Yeah.
But it's like even kids who are deaf or blind, like they laugh. Like that's what babies do. So it's usually because of some form of surprise, some form of difference in patterning. So we're all built to recognize patterns. Like that's what we do, right? So when the standard patterns change, that creates surprise, which creates laughter. So I'll go back to the dad joke, right? So dad jokes are a real easy thing to construct. Like this is where this is very mathematical. We know that this is what this is. So now a dad joke only came up recently. So it was identified, I think in I want to say 2014, somebody on Reddit called something a dad joke, and then it just blew up. So we know dad jokes to be pun, right? They're pun-based jokes that usually are kind of cringy. The standard example is, hey, I'm hungry. Be like, hi, hungry, I'm dad. Yeah. Like that's the standard dad joke. Now, but that can be just pun-based jokes. So you can absolutely construct a dad joke anytime you need to. Like it is based on language, it's based on structure, and it's easily built. So
right now.
Let's talk about this. I'm gonna share my screen here because I have a bunch of slides.
Oh, he's super prepared.
I'm a nerd.
Where's my glasses? I gotta sit down and take some notes.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to figure out. I haven't really done this without sharing all sorts of things. Let's see. Can I do this without? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you just seeing the presentation?
I am just seeing the presentation. I don't know
Okay,
what
good.
you're seeing, but we'll find out when
So
the
here's
show is over.
So this is kind of what I was talking about with structure, right? So you've got A to B is like a standard journey,
Yeah.
right? You know you're telling a story A to B. So A to B and a half or A to triangle, like that's a surprise. Like it is like, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's not something that I would have thought of. So now we know that we can then make up a joke, right? So what do we know about the topic? Are the things that you need to identify. First, what do we know about the topic? What is our standard journey in that topic? What's our A to whatever B? And what do we need to construct this joke? So, like if we use dogs, for instance, that's why that dog's there, right? So we need to know, what do we know about A? So what do we know about dogs? Right, what do you know about a dog? Say things you know about a dog.
Some of them shed.
Some of them shed, great. Yep. They here's a whole bunch of others, right?
Bark,
They
yeah.
shed, they bark, they like husky is the name of a dog. They have wet noses, they chase their tails, etc. Right? So these are things that these are just things we know about dogs. Okay, great. So we know these things about dogs. So now we need to have a list of words that are homophones or homonyms about the dog and about these things. So of this list in front of us, what are homophones and homonyms on that list? Now, we're gonna do this real quick because everybody, no, I don't.
I was like,
Yeah, everyone's like, wait, what's a homonym, right?
the only thing I saw was the word homo, and then I started to giggle in my head.
So, great, that's great. Let's go. So homonyms, of course, are words having the same spelling and pronunciation, but they have two different meanings, like the word well, right? So you have a well that's in the ground, and you can also say, well, I don't know, right? So it's two words that are the same.
Yeah.
Homophones are words that have different meanings and are spelled differently.
Yeah.
So new and new, KN versus N, right? Okay, cool. So we know that, right? So now back to this list. Of this list, we've got any number of them that might work. My Siri just activated. I don't know what I said, but my Siri just turned on. That's great. So of this list, we know like hairy. You can use hairy in different ways. Husky is a great example. Husky could be multiple things. You can look at it from like somebody who has a large pant size or a dog type, right? You know, things like that.
Bark of a tree and like bark.
Yeah, absolutely. Bark on a tree and bark.
Because that's what dogs say. They say bark.
They do. That's all that they say. That's how we know what they're saying, because they say bark.
Yeah.
So then we figure out what is our scenario, right? Where can we put this? So if we were to work with the husky joke, for instance, or the husky versus husky, right? Just use the homonym. Husky versus husky. So where can we put that? That would make sense, that we could tell a joke about people with larger pant sizes and or just a stout visage, if we will, and a husky dog. So, it looks like I was going to do hairy, but we're going to do.
Did you set that up? That was like something unexpected, and then I laughed.
I was, yeah. That's exactly what I said. This is science. But like, so if we do this, like we use a bar, right? So there's an old joke that they used to do in vaudeville. It's like 100 blanks are in a bar. The bartender says, "We don't serve blanks here," and then there's a joke.
Yeah.
So you say like 100 dogs are in the bar. The bartender says, "Hey, we don't serve here. You guys have to get out of here." So the dogs leave slowly because they're a little husky. So things like that. So that's how you do that. You figure out your list. You build. Now, as we do jokes like this more and more, you get better and quicker at this. so that you can trust yourself to pick the first thing and then go into it. Oh, let me get out of this. So you can just immediately go into uh, the larger chat. How do I get out of? How do I?
There's a stop share screen or
Oh yeah, here we go.
yeah.
Okay.
That,
So like that what I just showed you is a way to tell a joke every time.
yeah.
Now, there are rarely situations that your constructed joke is going to be a good idea. Like it's just not that's not a thing. Like
Yeah.
unless you're chatting with coworkers and you're like, "Hey, I thought of a good one." Like
Yeah.
that's not really where that comes from. So I
Yes.
think from an office perspective or from a peer-to-peer perspective, what it really comes from is noticing things in the world that are off or off kilter or different or silly.
Mhm.
I love silly things. And I
Yeah.
think silly things are probably that easiest drop in the bucket that you can do. And so, yeah, me rowing by a window is silly.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like any adult male or adult in general doing that is silly.
Yeah.
And I think that silly things are the easiest, most effective end to that means. So
Mhm.
I rest pretty wholeheartedly on silliness
Yeah.
uh, without being distracting. Because if you do too much of it, then you take from the situation.
Yeah.
But if you drop in that bucket and let it just simmer, it creates positive change.
Yeah. And so, and I was going to say too that, some people can like abuse this and like overdo it, like you were
Oh
just
yeah.
saying. Or they might, I think that some people like are afraid to be silly or be serious because it's like, is this going to be appropriate? Like, let me use the example of like, I started giggling at myself when I just saw like the words like homo twice, right? And that could be in a certain context, like not appropriate that I laughed about that. And
Sure.
I'm, far from being the person who is making fun of that, but I just it made me go back to like my like 11-year-old self where like that was funny back in the
Yeah.
90s. And I'm just kind of like, ooh, I wouldn't like sometimes I have to watch myself because I might say something that like triggers a funny memory in my brain, but then might not be well received by other people who
Yeah.
are who are like in the area, and sometimes you don't even know that you might be offending somebody. And so there's definitely a fine line with that humor. And so like, do you have suggestions on like tips and tricks of how to make sure that you're not going to like get blacklisted from something because of the one thing that you say? I mean, we sit here and we watch like politicians make gaffes all the time and we make fun of it, but like this could be something that down the road could be turned into something that could ridicule you or put you in a bad light when you didn't have that intention. So how do you, I mean, it's a lot to ask for, right? Some of this might take practice, but how do people start to not feel so, oh my God, I don't want to
So
say the
uncomfortable.
wrong thing and then get fired or whatnot? Like, what do you
Yeah.
have about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's an issue of trust. And I think that I don't know anybody who has ever busted into a room and is like, "I'm here, everybody, welcome to hell," right? Like that's not a thing people do.
Yeah.
So, not unlike that, with humor, with silliness, with doses of humor and comedy,
Yeah.
you don't bust into a room. You never want to bust into your room, right? You want to test the water a little bit. So if you do something silly or funny, you don't want to go too hard too fast. You don't want it to be too big or too. I would not suggest people row by windows until you've built trust with the people that you're in those meetings with.
Yeah.
So they know that, because I think if you don't do that, what ends up happening is it is a distraction.
Yeah.
But if people know you as a person and know that uh, there's little attached to the fact that you're doing that and you're not a crazy person, that's where the trust having been built allows for that. So in a social situation, you would do something small and see how it is responded to.
Yeah.
Tell a personal story that you find entertaining and see what people pick up on and see if you're on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, one of the best things that I have ever experienced in my life, but also would suggest to anybody is if you want to break down the walls of trust and communication and create a space where those things are okay very quickly, ask somebody how their day is and genuinely listen.
Hmm.
If you say to somebody, like, I mean, a great example is Comcast. Everybody loved Comcast. Let's talk about it. It's great. It's just the best company in the world for customer service. It's just lovely. If you ask the person on the other end of the phone, oh, you know what? Yeah, this is all my account information. Like, I get that, but how are you? What's happening? Are you having a hard day? What's going on? How's life? If you say that, they are having a better time. You end up having a better time. People help each other if you're having a good time.
Yeah.
And it's something as simple as genuinely caring for somebody else for 2 seconds in your day.
Yeah.
Genuinely give a moment of yourself to somebody else. Take a moment of your time to relate to somebody on a personal level, and it pays itself back thousands times over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, if so, for to answer your original question, I think small doses of fun until you can see how far you can push it.
And then you can channel your inner comedian and
Yeah,
do
channel your
like
inner fun time. Like,
stand up lunch breaks. So
yeah, I mean,
let's
I
walk
wouldn't,
into a bar.
I wouldn't do what you do with your friends because there's a lot of context that's been built up there. Like, don't go that hard, but
Yeah.
think of yourself in a party with your significant other where you have to be charming.
Yeah.
That's the start of what you want to do.
Yeah. I feel like also there's this piece of like kind of knowing you have to know your audience, right? Oh my gosh, I just looked at the time and we're like already going over, but I'm
Oh,
gonna finish
no.
this. Yeah, we were just like, this is the first time that I like haven't even looked at the time because I was having so much fun talking. Um,
Take that, other people on this show.
I know. I'm like slowly starting to like trickle over, and it's not good, but it's okay. Because just too many good conversations. There's this piece of knowing your audience, and so there is almost like this observation mode, right? Like you kind of have to get a lay of the land. Some people may have workspaces that are super serious, and if
Yeah.
you're this person in the back that's like, I just can we have some more fun?
Right.
You have to almost kind of know what is funny to these people, right? You
Yeah,
need to
totally.
kind of know and then try to infuse some of that and pay attention to what is making them laugh in the first place, right?
Yes.
If the laughs are sparse, like, ooh, this person joked around about this, and those are types of things that you can probably start to infuse or find more opportunities. And it takes practice, I'm sure, like because not every joke lands, right? Even as a somebody who's like a stand-up comic, which I think is something I'm going to try next year. Like it's one of those things where you have to kind of practice the delivery of it. And so this is a long-winded journey that you can go on, but
Yeah.
it's also something that, knowing the impact that humor can have, if we can all start to train ourselves. We should all just take comedy classes. Like that's basically what we're trying to sell here today,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, honestly, I mean, I think if there is just a general mindset of playfulness among your peers and among your coworkers in general, it's always a safer space for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that playfulness begets saying terrible things or making other people feel unsafe in that space or unhappy
Mhm.
or have to question their values or morals or anything. Like, that's not what this is.
Yeah.
It's about creating a space where everybody contributes to the larger whole and actually enjoys that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what I try to tell people. And I mean, but at the end of the day, April, between you and me and everyone who's watching, I think that what it ends up being is, in some respects, there's always an element of the cool kids from high school.
Mm,
The cool kids from high school, you got out of high school and you're like, they were actively not, in most cases, they weren't normally cool. Like, they're cool in that situation. People believe that they were cool and everybody feeds into that thing. They weren't necessarily always the nicest. They weren't always mean, but they weren't always the nicest. But what it really is it's the cliche phrase of, fake it till you make it. Like, they believed it and everybody else believed it too.
mhm.
Like, I mean, that's what if you believe that there's value to laughter, and if you believe in your heart that you can make a difference in one person's day, you're doing all the things right.
All the things. So, and if not, then you can reach out to us and we can joke with you all day long. So,
Hang on.
yes. Okay, so I know that we're already over, but I want to still end on this last, just because I want to see if something funny will come out of your mouth. So, somebody in my audience, I always try to end on a question that somebody in my audience has asked me. And
Awesome.
I know this is always something that me and my clients and people that follow me struggle with. So, it's like, what's one way that you can say no more often? And I'll probably have my non-funny response, but what would be your suggestion to help people say no more often?
Do you want to do non-funny first then?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I
I
think that in terms of like saying no, I think the first thing, and I always talk about this, so it's like I feel like I'm a broken record, or no, a repeating record, because if it was broken, it wouldn't play. So I think that the big piece is kind of understanding what are the things that you want to say no to. And a lot of times you can see that maybe it's because you're starting to feel energetically like something doesn't feel right, or that you're saying yes but like your body is saying no. What's that song? Just like,
it's an R. Kelly song, and you don't
oh
want
no, yeah, let's not talk about him. So I'm like, where is that coming from?
we're not gonna
So
talk about R. Kelly on this, are we?
I know, I was like, yeah, let's not talk about him. But there's this piece of kind of just knowing that, if you're feeling any sort of guilt or shame or something around when the word yes is coming out of your mouth, that's probably something you should have said no to. So you almost have to practice saying no. And maybe it's the opposite of like the yes and in improv. No, but to offer some sort of something, or even to just say, if you're looking for that middle ground of how to say no, you can say, let me think about it and get back to you, but give them a time that you would get back to them, because then you don't have to say yes.
Right.
That can be one of the first steps. Okay, that's the serious stuff. What would you suggest?
So now this is probably gonna end up on the serious side too. I don't think you should ever say no, period.
Mm.
But you can
But
always say yes. You can always say yes. There's some yes inside of your no, right? There's some version of what is being asked of you that you can help with or do.
yeah.
I'm not a person to say no or no but or whatever else. I will say, try to stay on the positive side of it. That's great. I might need to, let me think on this. Let me figure out how to do this so that it is powerful, so that I can actually put myself into this for you and help you with this. In regards to what you're asking me specifically, we're going to find a way to move this forward. But that having been said, let's figure out. Let me go think about what that is.
Yeah.
In regards to saying no, the easiest way to say no is just to absolutely say no, and then walk away and never talk to that person again. If it's people in your office asking you to do stuff, just lock yourself in a room, never talk to them. That's the easiest way to deal with this. That would be the easiest way.
Just hide in a hole forever and don't talk to anyone. You'll never have to say no ever again.
No, you'll never get a raise, but who cares? It's fine.
I love it.
I think that I think that there is always some version of positivity in a negative.
Yeah.
So there is a way to approach. There are solutions to everything.
Yep.
In all scenario.
I totally agree.
It might not be the exact thing being asked, but there is positivity behind the solution. So it's a matter of attaching yourself to the idea that positivity is in this somewhere. And if it's that conservation of energy we were talking about before, we're like, this is going to stink right now, but this is what we get, as long as we know that this is what's going to happen. Versus, well, I'm not going to do this because of change. I don't like change. So that's just a no. I think the only time anybody actually says no is because of resistance to change. And a resistance to change on any number of different levels. But we as humans change. That's how we survive.
Yeah.
Like, you learn a little bit of something and it gets you, like, for instance, my 3-year-old, he just loved running in the street. Love it. Just love it.
Yeah.
But when a car comes screeching and he goes, oh, I can't do that anymore because I'm going to get hit by a car. Like now I know this and now I won't do this. Or I know this is informing my choices. It's like people who regret things. There's no reason to regret your life. There's no reason to regret anything that's ever happened if it's terrible or great.
Yeah.
Never. Because it makes you have data points to pull from to be more powerful.
Yeah. And I think that this also just reiterates the fact that like when you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So I know
Yeah.
that the premise of this question was like people who tend to overgive and, kind of like use up their energy and
Sure.
deplete themselves because they say yes to too many things. And so there could be a way that you can say yes, but then also knowing that there might be other things that you're choosing to say yes to, so it's okay to say no to this one thing, or you can find a way to say some sort of modified yes that keeps both of you and whoever's asking for you to do something on in a happy place. So
And April, for the sake of your team, if you're ever the only one saying yes, you're not. It's not a team anymore. It's you.
yeah.
So we should build on each other's experiences and say, I'm strong, but I'm not strong as the two of us together.
Yeah.
So let's figure this out together. I will say yes to this little thing, but what I'm actually saying is yes, I'll join your team.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna make us cut this off because we could talk all day, and I had so much fun, and I hope those of you who are watching had a very informed conversation and now feel empowered to go take a comedy class or just start crafting jokes on your own and infusing those more into the world. I can't talk anymore. I've been spent for the day.
Let's just take naps.
I know. I'm kidding. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Episode 39 will be coming in a few weeks, and I hope you enjoyed this. And Pat, thank you so much for spending an hour of your day with me. I feel very full and empowered to go do nothing.
Well, if I could do anything but empower you to do nothing, I've done my job.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a good thing because I'm like,
yeah. Oh, okay.
It was, yeah, no. I'm just not in a bad way.
No, I know.
I'm gonna go rest now because this was hard work and it was fun, and I feel my cup is full. Half full.
Thank you.
Full.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, guys, see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.